did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in life, Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going. I am the greatest.
What's up, everyone? Hope everyone is doing well. You welcome to Imin, the Mass Media Group. Today is February the 25th, 2024. We are almost at the end of Black History Month, but we live Black history every single day. So thanks you for joining. My name is Yamoya, and I'll let the other guests introduce themselves.
Okay, the other half of Emin is here. I am Kim. Hello. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon on this beautiful Sunday, and I am Darlene.
And good afternoon on this beautiful Sunday. Peace in. I'm Antonio Ray Harvey, reporter for California Black Media. Greetings.
Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. And Imin the Mass Media Group, Yamoya, Kim, Darlene, and our good brother Antonio Ray Harvey attended the California Legislative Black Caucus, the reparations package, quote unquote, a press conference that was held 2/21 this 24th. That was that Wednesday or Thursday? I can't remember, y'all.
Wednesday.
That was Wednesday. Okay, so yes, this past Wednesday is when we attended this conference. So we just wanted to go through and just kind of analyze what is being said or what was said. And today we're not actually going to go over any of the bills. We're actually going to postpone that and go into each bill separately and deeper. But before we actually play the clip and go over our review, wanted to mention two articles if everyone has a chance to check it out. One article, and let me give a shout out to Sharice Cryer, who did send me this article by the LA Times, I believe it is. Yes, the LA Times. The article title is "If California Wants to Solve Homelessness, It'll Have to Support Reparations." So we'll actually go ahead and check that one out as well. So shout out to Sharice Cryer for that one. And also came across another article. It was titled "California's Primary Could Fail, Prominent Dems Elevate Newcomer." So I wanted to mention these two articles because as we go through and watch the CLBC in this video, I think it's very important to remind them and other legislators why it's necessary to support a comprehensive reparations package for the descendants. Not only for, once again, the legislation, but also the majority of the Democrats, right? that need to support, and obviously the Republicans, but definitely the Democrats, because at this point in the stage of the game, basically it's no reparations, no vote. So anyway, family, let's get into it. I guess afterward, if we want to give our commentary in terms of the temperature of the room, maybe we can. And Tony, don't let me forget, man. I want to actually talk about the question that you were actually going to ask Chair Lori Wilson. So if we can actually talk about that as well before we wrap up, I greatly appreciate that. So in the, I'm sorry, Tony, you were going to say something?
No, and I know what question it was, so we'll get into that too as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And let's get into it. If you guys can't hear it, let me know. And then I will either turn down the music or turn up the other side. Actually, let me just turn down the music a little bit just in case. No, it's not too loud, but all right, here we go. Let's start off. Lori Wilson, Chair Lori Wilson. We're not. I don't want to get into her introduction, but we'll go ahead and I guess she goes and speaks or gives it to member Akilah Weber. So let's start there.
Perpetuation of slavery, as well as the systemic racism and discrimination sanctioned by our state. A formal apology for those harms. Finally, yet importantly, the actions our state needs to address those harms. We recognize the constraints surrounding us and pressing against us. The budget environment, the constitutional framework, both state and federal, public sentiment. We are aware. I like Amanda Gorman's words in her poem, The Hill We Climb. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb. If only we dare, it's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It is the path we step into and how we repair it. We are standing here to fulfill the true meaning of the word reparations, to repair. It involves a comprehensive approach to dismantling the legacy of slavery of the legislature and the governor. My colleagues will go through the 2024 bills in more detail, and once complete, we will open it up for questions. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Assemblymember Dr. Weber, to start with the acknowledgement of the harms, ACA 135.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Akilah Weber, represent the 79th Assembly District in San Diego County. And I am here to discuss ACR 135, which affirms the finding of the California Reparations Task Force in regard to the harm done to Black Californians over the course of California's history. The report states, quote, America's wealth was built by forced labor of trafficked African people and their descendants, who were all bought and sold as commodities. Americans' government at all levels allowed or participated in exploiting, abusing, terrorizing, and murdering people of African descent so that mostly white Americans can profit from their enslavement. End quote. This is stuff that we already know. But the question that we had here is, what role did California play? Because before we can even start to address harm, we must discuss if harm even occurred here in the state of California. And the reparations report did a masterful job of researching and reporting the role that this state played. Although California joined the Union in 1850 as a free state, pro-slavery individuals held a great deal of power and influence that shaped our legislature, our state court system, and our representatives in U.S. Congress. To highlight a very few examples, In 1852, California passed and enforced a fugitive slave law that made us more pro-slavery than most other free states. California did not ratify the 14th Amendment until 1959 and did not ratify the 15th Amendment until 1962. In 1874, California Supreme Court ruled that segregation in schools was legal. This was 22 years before the U.S. Supreme Court case of Hussey versus Ferguson. And today, California is the 6th most segregated state to affirm the task force. It is also meant to educate ourselves about our history of California. I.D.B. Wells stated, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." The Reparations Task Force turned the light of truth, and this is laid out in ACR 135. This is the foundation upon which we will build for this year and years to come. I'm happy to report that this resolution passed the Assembly Judiciary Committee yesterday and will be presented on the floor this upcoming Monday. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer, to discuss the formal apology. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weber.
All right, so let's start there. So ACR 135 looks like this is the resolution. We're actually not going to get into it, but so just your opinion. I don't know who wants to take this. That was pretty long-winded. But ACR 135, just a question: how is this going to help the Black community collectively?
Well, excuse me, I could start right there, Brother Amoya. I think all the thing that it's doing is just recognizing, the atrocities and the harms that took place, occurred in the state. Dr. Weber, Keela Weber, I know she means well. You have to start at some of these places like that, but I haven't grasped what's the significance of what it will do to help improve our, Black California lives at this point. From what I read, as far as the language, ACR 135 formally recognize and accept responsibility for all the harms and atrocity committed by representatives of the state who promoted, facilitated, enforced, and permitted the institution of chattel slavery. So that's basically a recognition. Okay, that's what ACR 135 is. How we will benefit from that, going forward, I don't know. Okay, because I know, as you see, you froze the screen up on Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer. His bill is a formal apology. So at this point, my opinion, I like to hear it from the other two Ida B. Well journalists and Kim Mims and Darlene, like to hear y'all point of view on the certain things is how will we benefit from these bills going forward?
Well, I'll just say, and this is Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. Like you said, one recognizes the harm, and one is an apology. I mean, could we have just merged both of those together? They seem kind of similar there, but how will it benefit us? I mean, I guess. And this will come up later. They talk a lot about educating the public. I guess it will be, beneficial in that aspect, is that we'll have, a full resolution to present that has, gone through the legislature, that we can say, hey, use this to educate the public. But that's about it. I mean, we've already got the task force final report. That's something that can educate the public, but I think that I see that as the biggest benefit, and just acknowledging that these harms did indeed occur.
Yes, thank you, Kim. I totally agree with you that it is a part of the education of the public, but the problem I have with it is that you have these two bills, but then you have, quote unquote, the issue of taking Black history out of the school system. So, how and when will they be educated? Do you wait till these kids are full grown adults and they'll be less susceptible to it? Or do you want to integrate these into the school system? They didn't talk about that. To me, that would be a better way of handling this, but they didn't mention that at all. So that's my take on it. And acknowledgement and an apology, yes, but it needs to go a step further, and we know that.
Well, I totally agree with both of you. I really do. And especially what you just mentioned too, Kim, as far as these bills could have been combined. But I understand there has to be a starting point before you can first you have to educate people on these issues and these harms and atrocities. But to get to the rest of the part of the reparation package, I understand that, and I think that's what the strategy here with these two. But they're both similar, and they both could have been combined in one to pass legislation.
Yes, and we'll also note that Assembly Member Weber said that it will be heard on the floor this upcoming Monday. So that I take that as to be tomorrow. So that might be something you want to tune into if interested.
All right, thank you. Let's continue.
I'm Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer, representing the 57th Assembly District, South Central Los Angeles. And I want to thank Dr. Weber for stating the case for why we have to have reparations. In any apology, you have to acknowledge the harms that you've done. It's hollow in any apology unless you actually state why you're apologizing, not only for the people inside this room, but also the people outside this room to acknowledge it. Otherwise, you're complicit in the crime that has been inflicted on African Americans for centuries. America's original sin is the genocide and enslavement of human beings. America's second greatest sin is watching it happen and pretending that it never did. From the moment the settlers set foot on this fertile land, we all became entangled in a system that made winners and losers, rich and poor, haves and have-nots. From our country's inception, you were an owner or you were a slave. No one chose to be a slave. No one chose to be chained to another slave and forced to clear brush from the slave behind you until so you could till the dirt so that another slave could plant seeds for the owners to eat food. No one chooses this. Thousands upon thousands of Africans were plucked from their homes, shoved into the bottom of a ship and brought here to build a dream that none of them would ever take part in if they remained alive at all. When California joined the Union, it did it by claiming to be a free state. Take that in. We claim to be a free state, F-R-E-E, free. Then we discovered gold. You know what trumps free? G-O-L-D. After that, it was off to the races. This legislature allowed slave owners to bring their enslaved property so long as they arrived here before 1850. Then the California State Supreme Court said slave owners are okay as long as they only stay temporarily. That's not freedom. Slavery is one of the state's negative marks, and we must begin the process to atone for our role in that system. On Friday, I introduced AB 3089 to finally begin that atonement, to finally begin what we want to call the process of healing. This is not a document to shame anyone. It's about to finally heal this state and ultimately this country this nation and ultimately the world on the enslavement of African Americans. The task force started the conversation, and Dr. Akila's resolution outlines the harms presented by the task force. My bill writes the apology and will enshrine it, ultimately enshrine it here in its capital for all to be able to see what we've done and to be able to take that to other parts of the world. Before we do anything, the state must apologize for perpetuating these human rights violations, because that's what slaves were, humans with no rights. Our apologies aren't perfect and it can't stand alone. I'm calling on the community to review the apology and reach out to my office to provide input. This is a labor of love for everyone standing here that will live on as state law once it is signed by the governor, so that we want to hear from everyone. Now then, I'll turn it over to Dr. Corey Jackson to talk about his bill. Thank you.
All right. I don't have too much to say about that, but if anybody else does, please speak up. If not, well, we will continue.
Yeah, well, I guess he touched on the benefit that we had identified. He said it will enshrine this language in the capital for all to see. And he also said that he's looking for community input after reviewing the apology. So looks like there may be time to have some community input on this apology if once you review it, you see anything is lacking.
From my understanding, that to me sounds like another series of community listening sessions that's coming down the pipe, because that's the only way that you're going to get the community involved, or at least hear their input. So we'll see how that goes, and that's something that probably needs to happen so they can hear and understand what these Black lawmakers are talking about in forms of a reparation package. So that basically that's what it sounds like to me. And obviously, these forms of apologies, I think that was done with the redress with the Japanese. Everything starts with an apology, which I'm okay with. I think San Francisco Reparation Commission, they're going in that same path, because that discussion, what happened about a week and a half ago, as far as the apology. So all of this makes sense. At this front end of it, I understand that, and that was part of the recommendation. Asking for an apology. That was constructed by the California Reparation Task Force. So let's see how this thing go forward as far as the apology.
Yes, I agree with both Kim and Brother Tony, but also if the CLBC had read chapter 16 of the final report, which is entitled Recommendation for a California Apology, and I'll just paraphrase, that the task force does state in that chapter that apology alone is not adequate. It needs to be combined with material forms of reparations. Apologies provide an opportunity for community reckoning with the past and repair for moral, physical, and dignitary harms. So they need to take it a step further. Read the chapter.
Thanks for sharing that too, Darlene, because I did read that second part too. Yes.
Yes.
I almost forgot about that. Thank you for sharing that with the public.
Mm-hmm. It just needs to go a little further. They recommend that an apology alone is inadequate. So please do your due diligence, CLBC, and we will be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Darlene, Kim, and Tony. When we take a look at this bill, let's see if they do have some of that information and recommendations from the California Reparations Task Force. All right, let's continue.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member Dr. Corey Jackson, the 60th Assembly District. It's important to understand that in our efforts to right the wrongs of California's past atrocities, and racist policies that have oppressed Black people socially and economically since the inception of this state. We are presenting reparations in all areas of our civil society that represents more than just cash payments. But why must we do this? We must do this because, number one, we have to understand that in order to do some of the most innovative and some of the most targeted reparations legislation, we must first clear the path of any legal barriers that exist within our Constitution. One of the chief among those is Proposition 209, the 1996 law that raised a legal barrier that does not allow us to help people of color because they are simply people of color. We have to understand that the era of the colorblind society is a failure. If you can't see us, you can't serve us. Why? Because all of the research shows that the best way to serve any group of people who have a common ailment, who have a common issue that they must address, that you must approach them and you must work with them in their own cultural context. Because even the most well-meaning interventions can actually do more harm if they are not done in the cultural context in which the people find themselves. Therefore, ACA 7 would allow for the approval of Proposition 9 to allow us to sidestep Prop 209 by focusing on some of the most pressing issues that are facing people of color. For instance, there are many people of color, specific community, who are ravaged by.
All right. I just want to get everybody's opinion. Should we continue with what Corey Jackson has to say and get to the next one? Or
well, we can move on, but I do want to offer a commentary on that. You know, what's this ACA 7?
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll definitely make comment. Yeah, we'll definitely make comment. I just want to know, should we move on to the next one and then we'll make commentary about it right now, or should we listen to his whole speech? Does anybody want to continue or no?
I don't mind listening to the full context of it. That's up to the
Kim,
other.
Darlene, do you want to listen
I
to the
agree
full
with
context?
Tony. Might as well, hunker down and
Well, that's what we're
listen to
here
the-
for, because I'm counting the many times he says POC.
You counting, huh, darling?
I'm
All
counting.
right, cool.
So let's
All right.
hear
That's
what
what
he
I'm
has
getting
to
at.
say.
Okay.
All right.
This ain't about just Black California. This is BIPOC. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Black and
DEI in the building. All right, fam.
Okay.
All right, I just wanted to just get y'all's feedback. All right, cool. We'll continue.
Issues of diabetes, of obesity, of high blood pressure, of poverty. If we are prohibited from addressing these issues from the cultural context of the people who are facing these things, then we cannot make the meaningful progress that we are trying to make. Therefore, we are seeking to revise or amend Prop 209 to ensure that we can increase the life expectancy of some of our most marginalized and oppressed populations, that we can lift people out of poverty, which California created policies and structures to ensure that certain people are in poverty, and to finally deal with, in a targeted and more meaningful way, the gross and despicable issues facing Black students when it comes to their educational achievement. ACA 7 is an opportunity to make sure that California no longer has to look past proven ways to help communities facing the greatest inequities in health outcomes, education, and poverty rates. We also have a part of our reparations package, ACA 8, that is authored by our chair, Assembly Member Wilson. ACA 7 would remove the exception of involuntary servitude from our state constitution and declare that all forms of slavery is prohibited. Californians must understand that the Golden State allows for slavery to happen today. Today, slavery takes on the modern form of involuntary servitude, including forced labor in prisons. Slavery is wrong in all of its forms, and California should be clear in denouncing that in the Constitution. This is good. I wish I wrote it. California is among only 16 states with an exception clause for involuntary servitude in its state constitution. Most recently, voters in Alabama, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont removed involuntary servitude language from their state constitutions. California is not leading the way. Incarcerated people have long faced crucial treatment for any work absences. This includes physical violence, solitary confinement, denial of phone calls and family visits, and limiting participation in self-help groups and disciplinary write-ups that result in longer prison terms. Such punishments or threats of such punishments are often used even when absences are due to illness or injuries sustained through the work. This sounds like the instances that our ancestors faced on those tobacco and on those cotton fields. The legacy of slavery and forced labor runs deep in California's history. From the exploitation of indigenous people in Spanish missions to Black slaves forced to mine for gold, we have the opportunity to take a step in the direction towards ending that legacy. And now it's my great honor to bring up Senator Stephen Bradford.
All righty. Who wants to go first?
In terms of Assemblyman Corey Jackson's presentation,
Yes, sir.
That was a bill that he was already working on, that he had already authored, that he was going to present anyway. And obviously it became one of the 14 bills in the package, the reparation package. And as you can see, it more speaks to a group of people, as he had said, okay, a body of people, not specifically us, okay, because you're talking about Proposition 209 that, bans affirmative action here in the state. So the state will not fund programs based on race, okay, and that's basically what he's talking about. But he's talking about us as a group of people, okay, and that means Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, blah blah blah. Okay, it doesn't specifically. It's not specifically reparations for Black Californians alone. There's reparations for everybody, if you're a person of color. So that's just my thoughts on it. It will be an amendment to Proposition 209, if that's the correct wording, because as we know, Proposition 209 went to the voters again a few years ago, and it was voted down. And that was a bill that was an initiative that was put on the ballot by Secretary of State Shirley Weber when she was still in the Assembly. Okay,
Yeah, was
so
that
failed.
Proposition 16? I think it was.
Proposition 16, right? Okay, which was overwhelmingly defeated at the ballot box. Okay, saying that the people of California wanted to keep Proposition 209 in place, which we know it was first passed back in 1996. Okay, when Governor Wilson was Wilson was the governor at that time too. So this is pretty much something to trying to attack that, or trying to skirt, not exactly skirt the law, okay, but do something of a amendment so you could get some of these things done as far as people and their race and their color. I'm not against this bill at all. Okay, I've been knowing it's been in the pipeline for quite some time. He's been working, Assembly Jackson been working on this sometime. I just like to get y'all opinion on it too. I mean, it is part of the reparation package, 14 bills, and I guess some that they wants to push through, but it's gonna be hard pressed up against Proposition 209.
Tony, I agree with you. It was a bill that he was working on. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4 times he said POC, and he did mention Black students as far as their education is concerned. I'm not sure where he was going with that. And then he started talking about our ancestors. I'm sorry, he moved to ACA 8 with that one. So let me back up a little bit. This would not benefit us because the vote on March 29th from the California Reparations Task Force recommended that it be lineage-based. We know that race is unconstitutional. So this is just something that I believe, and I'm not 100% sure what his demographic in his district looks like. He's just trying to satisfy them.
And I forgot to mention that too, Darlene. It seems like, and like I said, this is no disrespect to Assemblyman Jackson, because he has came up, with a couple of legislation that he's been trying to work through the legislature, including banning canine police dogs, as far as apprehension or crowd control and stuff. But I did gather that from this presentation here, Wednesday, February 21st, that he was speaking to his body, his constituents, okay, in Southern California, specifically the Riverside County area, stuff like that. That was basically, I'm talking to you. That's just my opinion. I understand that too, but I agree with you 100% on that, Darlene.
All right, Kim, do you have anything, or should we keep it pushing?
I'll just say that I agree with Darlene and Tony, and this really doesn't apply. I mean, it could apply, but I don't think it's the biggest barrier. One thing he said was clear path of legal barriers in getting rid of the Prop 209. As you guys both mentioned, this is a repurposed bill that he's already been trying to push through the legislature. So it's like, it just kind of threw that in there because it was one of his priorities anyway. And as Darlene stated, our claim is lineage-based. So 209 should not be the legal barrier.
All righty, let's continue.
Thank you, Assemblyman Jackson. I, along with Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer, spent 2 years on the Reparations Task Force, and if there was anything that was clearly documented and highlighted, was the racially motivated taking of property all across the state and even this nation from African Americans. just like the legislation I authored 3 years ago to return Bruce's Beach to the Bruce's family that was racially motivated and taken, SB 1050 will provide a broad pathway to justice for others harmed by the racist policies and the practices of distant and recent past. Many African Americans here in California and across this nation were denied the opportunity to prosper and build generational wealth as a result of racial bias. Please understand, generational wealth is through land ownership, it's through home ownership, and we were denied that. We must remove that stain and make it right. In California, government officials abused the power of eminent domain by using it to destroy homes and move people off of their land, out of their neighborhoods. This was often based solely on race. And we had plenty of examples during the task force 2 years. San Francisco, Oakland, Palm Springs, Coloma, San Diego, and Russell City. And we just recently saw last week on the news in Santa Monica about Silas White, an African American who bought property in Santa Monica, started a African American beach club, and his property was taken for the purpose of making a parking lot that was never built. Similar to the Bruce's Beach property, it was for a park that was 40 years before a park was ever on that land. One example again is in my district, the 105 freeway. Over 3,500 African Americans were displaced, 117 businesses were displaced for a freeway. My music teacher, as an elementary student, home was taken in 1970 for this freeway. The real harm, it's real harm, I should say, and these folks deserve to be compensated. And let's be clear, California and America has stolen and taken more from the African Americans than we ever burned and looted. I'm also asked to talk about AB 1815 by Assemblymember Weber, which would expand the Crown Act, as you well know. Former Senator and now Supervisor Holly Mitchell authored that bill in 2019, and it would prohibit amateur sports clubs and organizations from discriminating against anyone on the basis of race associated with their hair texture and protective hairstyles. The original Crown Act protected students and employees. However, many children compete in non-school affiliated athletic programs and sports clubs, and adults participate in amateur sports and leagues on a voluntary basis. And 1815 would extend the Crown Act to protect those individuals. So now I have the opportunity to introduce Assemblymember Fumble.
All right, so we have SB 1050, eminent domain, and AB 1850, Crown Act.
Can I ask a trivia question before we go forward in regard to Senator Stephen Bradford?
Yes, sir.
What was significant about that presentation? If anybody, it's just a trivia question. If not, I can help you out, of course. But what was significant about that particular presentation when he walked up there to that podium?
Well, for me, he says when he talks about eminent domain, he said it's first of all, he said it was based on race. We do know that. And he said that these people need to be compensated. For me, that's what I picked up, compensation.
Kim, you want to chime in on that? If you have any thoughts or reservation about that particular presentation? And thank you, Darlene. Kim?
I guess it would help to take myself off mute. But, it does seem that he does seem to at least target his language towards descendants, which is a good thing, if I'm hearing correctly here. And yeah, that would be significant for me in Bradford's bills, is that he seems to get the assignment that this is for descendants.
Okay, great. Thank you, ladies, for sharing that. Okay, and everything that you said about that, because I totally agree, with everything that Bradford has been talking about as far as, eminent domain and people looking at property. But this is what got me at the press conference. He did not say anything about SB 490. That's what I thought when he stepped up to the mic. That's what he was going to talk about. Okay. Then I'm not saying I detected any problem or anything like that, but I was just totally surprised. It just kind of blew me away because for the past month, at least for the last 6-7 months, going back to August, okay, when he first released details that SB 490 was going to be legislation, okay, and what we're talking about is the de facto Freedmen Bureau, California American Affairs Freedmen Agency, okay, which would be created to facilitate all the reparation activities that's going to go on in this state. Okay, and as far as eligibility, genealogy, okay, assessing people for their losses, including property. That was not spoke about because it is not one of the 14 prioritized legislations, going forward. That's why that's why Senator Bradford had his own separate press conference the day after this 14 bill package was introduced. That was January 31st. On the first day of Black History Month, February 1st, okay, Bradford came out and talked about this particular bill about, taking a property, as you can see, as part of one of these 14 bills, okay? Then he mentioned 3 other bills, including SB 490, if you follow what I'm saying, okay?
I follow what you're saying,
is
Tony. I was just going to say, I follow what you're saying, but I wasn't expecting him to talk about 490 for precisely the reason you stated. It is not one of the priority bills in this 14 bill package. So, I mean, that didn't even cross my mind that he would be speaking about 490 here because it's not in the package. It's they were here to discuss the package.
Okay, agree. I agree with you, Seven. It's just with me, following this whole thing. And and it really, it makes sense. Okay, you already knew, Kim, that he wasn't going to speak about it, but I thought in some regards that he was going to talk about it. And as y'all know, okay, members of the other press, the other reporters in there, they were asked 3 or 4 times about CAFA, about this Freedmen's Bureau Agency, about the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. So I was surprised. I'm glad that you wasn't surprised. I was surprised, but I'm still, I was still trying to, put things together, why these things did not take place. Now I'm understanding, okay, because obviously Senator Bradford is going maverick, to push this legislation and 3 others. Oh, well, I'm sorry, and 2 others. We already know about the taking of property, which is one of the 14 bills, if I'm making any sense and stuff. So it seems like, with SB 490, he's going to be pushing along, I'm not saying by himself, but that's exactly what it seems like and stuff. So, and the reason why I brought that up too, ladies and gentlemen, as far as the apology, yes, that should be in place. It should be at the top of, the priorities too. But I just thought that, to institute, to bring up about a, not necessarily a facility, okay, but a governing institution, that could facilitate these reparation talks going forward. That should have been a bill that should have been brought about first, okay? One of the things that have been, questioned about that, is how much is this going to cost? Because you do know, not only it would be headquartered here in Sacramento, there would be kind of like satellites all across the country. All across the state, so they can reach and serve the people, across the state as well as they do here in Sacramento. So those things, they cost money and things like that, and it will take a little time. But I can't see, as far as them trying to make all of this other stuff happening without CAFA. Okay. That's just my total opinion. I offer my commentary, professionally as a journalist. That's just my commentary. I'm not really being objective in that manner. Okay, it's just the thought process of it that I think that this would have been able, along with apology and SB 490 going forward, would have been the best, essential, effective way, to push reparations here in the state of California. So I'll stop right there.
No, Tony, I think you're spot on in your analysis, and it is alarming and concerning that the CAFA office is not one of the CLBC 14 priority bills. They should have just made it 15, put the CAFA in there, because like you said, it's the infrastructure that's going to make all of this possible moving forward. So I agree with you.
I mean, let's go all the way back to 1865, Darlene, and Amoya. Okay, that's what it was done for. Okay, when they came up with the Freedmen Bureau. All right, they wanted to make sure people had food, put clothes on their back, and get education. Okay, and give them skills to get jobs. So they can take care of themselves. Okay, as Dr. Shirley Weber said back in January 2022, I believe that was. Okay. These people, when they were let go, they had nothing but the scalps on their backs. Okay, so here we are again 200 years later, 160 years later, let's put it like that, 1865. And, we still in discussions about reparations. And the only thing that we can lean back on that the people who have did the research know that how effective this is the Freedmen Bureau agency. Okay. I'm okay with the 14. I mean, them presenting the 14 bill package the way as they want to. Okay, there are some concerns with that already. That's why we're here talking about that. Okay, but to move forward, okay, because this was the gist of the talks going forward. During that 2-year study, an investigation by that 9-member panel, Reparation Task Force. Okay, every other discussion seemed like Freedmen Bureau, okay, which the name came out of CAFA. And that would be, everybody knows this, okay? Now, I don't want to get too much in here and dominate the conversation, but you got to understand that most of these people who were on CLBC, they wasn't at those meetings, okay? All right? And I'm not, they got their own priorities. I understand that, okay? I understand that, all right? But Reggie Jones Sawyer, Stephen Bradford, both from Southern California, they worked for the majority of it. And they were still able to carry out their duties as lawmakers in the legislature. Okay? That's what, it just doesn't jive with, okay, you guys can come in here, y'all can do it and say what y'all want. I understand, okay? Because you're only talking to about 500,000, 750,000 people that's in your district, okay? I do understand that, but we're talking about reparations. So if you're gonna be together about this thing and understand the whole aspect of it, okay? Read the 1,100-page report, which I do think many of them, been running through it anyway, okay? We gotta be together on all of this stuff, okay? This was one of the first things that was introduced back in August. SB 49, Senate Bill 490. Okay, and I hope I'm not sounding too emotional about this thing, but that should have been the guiding light. It should have been the beacon of light. Okay, because the Freedmen Bureau, we already know what happened to that. I think it only lasts 7 to 8, 9 years because the next president came in there after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He stopped. No more funding for this. Okay. And I think he was from the South anyway, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was, I want to say Johnson. I forget who the president after. Okay. All right. He stopped it. And he stopped it in the middle of the Reconstruction era. Okay. And then all types of things started happening to us. Okay. The Ku Klux Klan started coming in and terrorizing our communities. Okay. We couldn't get jobs. We couldn't get food. Couldn't get housing. Okay, on and on and on to 1919, Red Summer, all right, the Great Migration. Here we are in California, we're still going through this thing. Okay, all of this happened after the Freedmen Bureau Agency was dismantled. Back in 1860, I think 1872, if I'm not mistaken. Go back and look at the history, Google it and stuff. This would have been, CAFA would have been the guiding light to everything. Okay. Now I don't know. Okay. Now, as far as reporting on this thing objectively, okay, y'all know Tony Harvey. Y'all know Antonio Ray Harvey is going to do that. Okay. But I am going to question authority going here forward of how this thing was done, because a lot of things has not been explained. Y'all heard it's right here on this video. I think it was Isaac Bryan, Assemblyman Isaac Bryan, who Democrat from Ladera. We are united. They did say that. Okay, so I can't do nothing but take your word on this. You said y'all are united on this. Okay, but it still seems like there's some holes, folks. Okay, I'm talking to my, the co-host here. I'm talking to everybody out here listening as well, or who's going to view it later on. If they're going to do these listening sessions, those things are going to come up, especially SB 490. Okay. Yeah. Now I wonder if they do these community listening sessions. I know they're going to have some. You're going to have to get the input from the community. They already said that. Okay. Will SB 490 even be brought into the discussion with these 14 bills?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's all they were talking about. These prioritized bills the other day.
Yeah. Well, Tom, we wanna try to keep it pushing, brother.
Okay. Can I, before we go to Assemblyman Bonta, can I just say something about Senator Bradford real quick, Moya?
Yes.
I agree. First of all, I agree with Kim. I didn't expect him to bring it up. I agree with everything you said, Tony, and especially how can you even pass SB 1050 for the return of property and land ownership if you don't have an infrastructure to push it through, number one. And then number two, when you were on the show before, and they even mentioned it here, that the collective of the CLBC is behind all of these proposals. Well, I actually went to SB 490 about 3 weeks ago on their website, on the legislative website. Senator Bradford is the only name on there. The other CLBC members are not listed unless it's changed in the last 3 weeks. Okay, so I agree with you. And then really quick, one of Kim's pet peeves, the AB 18, the Crown Act. What I have a problem with the Crown Act is they talk about amateur sports. Again, this bill does not go further enough. There's a young man, although this is not California, there's a young man in California who's wearing a very neat cornrow style. He has been in place, suspended from his school because they're telling him that when you in America, you need to conform. He can not even sit with his classmates because of his hair. So they have taken this young man away from his education and as far as being with his classmates. So just having the Crown Act in amateur sports does not go far enough.
Yeah, and I know you want to move on, Moya, but real quick, real quick.
All right, Crown Act.
No, I'm not. I'm not even going there with the Crown Act. I mean, I think we've said all we need to say on that. But as far as what Darlene said in SB 490 with the CAFA office and how it relates to SB 1050, the eminent domain takings and having to have the CAFA office in place kind of to help facilitate the give back of these properties. What about people like Daniel Blue, who said he didn't even know that, it was his, family's property that was taken until he found out. He was a grown man. He said he used to run by the property every day and didn't even have any idea. What about people who might not know that they have property taken? Is somebody going to make them aware of these property takings? Or if you don't know, just too bad.
Well, yeah, Kim, I mean, you bring up a valid point, and I don't want to belabor it because we have someone in our family, my great aunt, that had an issue with eminent domain. But that's what the SB 490, the CAFA office, could potentially help resolve, right? Where you can have people investigating their ancestors who were in California that this might have happened to. So shout out, Tony. I appreciate that. I mean, that definitely is before 90. I mean, it just gets back to that. We got to have some infrastructure and people who care and want to make the government and the community accountable. Right. So all valid points. And that's why I'm so appreciative and I'm so glad that everyone is here and that we're working in this capacity, because there's some things that I look at and then I'm just like, oh, I never thought about that. So very, very valid points. Let's continue. It looks like Assembly Member Mia Bonta is about to speak. So let's go into the next one.
Good morning. I'm Assemblymember Mia Bonta, representing proudly California's 18th district, which includes the beautiful people of Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville. I'm also chair of the Assembly Health Committee this year. I appreciate you all being here today as we share our reparations bill package as a collective and together. The Black Caucus is moving forward with two health-related reparations proposals this year: AB 1975, which I am authoring, and SB 1089 by Senator Smallwood-Rivas. Both of these proposals address food injustice, because you cannot fight for justice when you do not have the sustenance in order to be able to do that. As we know, Black households disproportionately experience food insecurity and disproportionately experience highly limited access to affordable, nutritious food. Unhealthy options like sugary drinks, processed foods, and fast food is too easily available in our communities and cleverly marketed towards our communities. These historical legacies of redlining and other forms of discrimination is a central cause of food injustice. Our markets have been taken away from us, our local farms have been decimated, our ability to access food that we know is healthy is destroyed. These legacies have created unfavorable social determinants of health, making Black Californians more susceptible to conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure. To combat this, the Reparations Task Force recommended improving access to nutritious and affordable foods. My bill, AB 1975, will make medically supportive and nutritious services under Medi-Cal a permanent benefit for all recipients. These services include medically tailored meals, food pharmacies, and the produce prescriptions for managing or reversing diet-sensitive health conditions. Areas like Stockton and Alameda County, who have implemented their own versions of these programs, have reported improvements in managing diabetes, being more comfortable with and excited about cooking with new healthy foods, and orienting around culturally appropriate and concordant foods. By covering medically supportive food and nutritious services, AB 1975 aims to promote health equity and reduce healthcare costs. The task force also highlighted that one of the harms facing African American communities in California is the lack of access to grocery stores and supermarkets. In fact, we are more likely to be able to find a liquor store in our communities than we are a supermarket. White neighborhoods on average have 4 times as many supermarkets as predominantly African American neighborhoods. SB 1089 by Senator Smallwood-Rivas addresses food injustice by requiring advance notification to community stakeholders prior to the closure of a grocery store in underserved or at-risk communities. Because when you close a store, when you close the ability for people to go in and shop healthily and shop in an empowered way, you reduce their ability to be able to live. It's that plain and simple. This bill seeks to remedy the harms from disruptions in access to food and provide meaningful information to community members. Nutrition plays a quintessential role in people's overall health. Our health package marks a significant step towards rectifying health disparities and advancing repair and justice for Black and African American communities in the state of California. With that, I have the honor of bringing up our Assembly Member McCarty, who will talk to our education package.
All right, we got 2 minutes, and then we're going to the next one. Anybody want to take it? Are we good to move forward? This is health package.
No, I'll just take it real quick. You more than less than 2 minutes. Her language as far as she says Black African American communities. Who is she speaking to? Again, it's, you know, she's not directing it to descendants, and she is from Alameda. San Francisco is her district. So again, San Francisco Black community is at 3%. I'm not sure what Alameda is, but I know not much. So again, I'll leave it at that.
All right, let's continue.
Good morning. I'm proud to be here in unison with our 12-member legislative Black caucus, focusing on the 3 A's: acknowledging, apologizing, and action. And this will be our work this year and going forward. Certainly education is front and foremost an issue for Black Californians. We know first that we are many times first in issues like the criminal justice system, that we find in homeless facilities throughout Sacramento and California. We also know that access to early education, to preschool, after school programs, advanced placement programs in K through 12, and certainly higher education, we are certainly way down on the list. So we know that we have a budget situation we need to address, but it doesn't mean we're not going to act. We have to put forward real plans. This is an opportunity to expand career education in California, focusing on our existing budget allocations by requiring that districts in proportionally redline neighborhoods focus on career education for the kids need the most. So we're going to flip the redlining issue on its face. So we know that redlining, of course, was a systemic denial of services such as mortgages, insurance loans, other financial services to residents in certain areas based upon race. So we're going to use those exact same areas and focusing on state education programs for those same families and communities. We're going to make sure that we defend the program in the budget a couple of years ago that we have for the $300 million block grant for the highest performing subgroup to making sure we focus on Black students throughout California. But career education really is about economic development and a pipeline for high wage jobs. And too often reports show that in these neighborhoods, they have second class, low quality vocational programs, really the continuation of Jim Crow era segregation. So a few years ago, we created new programs in here, new CTE programs focusing on the best of the best strong workforce program, the career education incentive program. This will make sure that these are focused on these neighborhoods where students and young people can meet them the most. So this is our opportunity to move forward with an education agenda that focuses on upward mobility, because we know this is 70 years this May from the landmark decision of Brown versus the Board of Education that says that education should be equal to everybody. But we know 70 years later that it is not. So this 2024 is our year of action, and I'm proud to be pushing forward this measure with our caucus. And with that, I would like to bring up my colleague from the Los Angeles County area, Mike Gibson, to talk about criminal justice and business issues.
All right. Did he mention, or did anybody mention the bill number? Because I didn't hear it. Tony, Kim, Darlene.
No, I didn't hear it either.
Let's see.
I went to the caucus website and it looks like McCarthy is AB 3131 and career education financial aid for red light communities.
Okay, because I didn't have a bill assigned to it. All it had, excuse me, all it says in that press release that we got, almost a month ago, career education financial aid for red line communities, which he did.
Yeah. They've updated on the CLBC website with The January 31st press release that was released, they've updated all of the bills with bill numbers now. If anybody wants to go take a look at that.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it just wasn't me because I didn't hear a bill number. All righty, let's continue.
Thank you very much. Good morning to each and every one of you. I feel that this morning that Martin King Jr. is standing with us. I feel that Frederick Douglass is smiling at us. Dr. Charles Drew, Rosa Parks, and the list goes on and on. The responsibility that these 12 members have today to change the trajectory of California, change the course of righting the wrongs of this state. We stand in John's shoes today, and I am absolutely thrilled and excited to stand with each member of the California Legislative Black Caucus, because the mantle is weighing on their shoulders for us to change the trajectory for generations to come in California with the work that we're doing here today. And so I stand proudly and boldly with each man and each woman that's here today that represents the legacy of other members of the Legislative Black Caucus. I'm excited today, but we have a task. So I'm Mike Gibson. I represent the 65th State Assembly District. Those are areas of Watts Willowbrook, where I was born and raised, Compton, Carson, North Long Beach, Harbor Gateway, North and South, Harbor City, Wilmington, and San Pedro. Because I did that so that you can understand the African Americans in which we all represent in the state of California. And we're proud to represent those African Americans and those communities. It is important that we first recognize the state of California's effort to combat the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion in this state. However, we continue to progress. We are witnessing the effects of the long-standing institution of slavery and how that impacts our communities. And in the growing economy, it is critical that impacted communities are given the best possible opportunity for stable communities and success. Currently, according to the United States Department of Labor, Black Californians earn, watch this, 72 cents for every dollar earned by our white counterparts. The piece of evidence that serves as proof of this long-standing consequences of slavery. It is imperative that we take further measures to address the inequalities and expand the opportunities for growth and professional development. This is why I'm proud to introduce Assembly Bill 2862. This bill expands the priorities of African American applicants seeking occupational licenses in this state of California. It will serve as a necessary and a much needed gateway for the broken of the historic racist barriers. We must continue to champion legislation that combats these racial barriers and expand not only the opportunities for African Americans, but also for the outcomes of success. California has spearheaded the evolution of advancement, and I am proud to be part of that as a member of the California Legislative Black Caucus. I take great pride in our state's prioritization of inclusion. However, our work is far from done as we affect slavery and take it on, and systems that will continue to perpetuate slavery in our society. Again, I am proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with members of the California Legislative Black Caucus, and I want to continue on by acknowledging the next speaker who will talk about criminal justice, Mr. Chris Holden.
All right, 2 minutes. Anyone want to go at this one? or we can move on.
So he, was so passionate about whatever it is he was saying that he didn't even mention his bill number.
I see.
Yeah, he did, but it took like 5 minutes
Did he?
into the bill.
Yeah, his
Yeah, it
bill
was
number is
too
AB
interesting.
2862.
Okay.
He did mention
I
it.
got lost.
And the
in the-
passion was just phony to me. I'm just gonna say it.
It was performative.
It just, and then he started reminding, I'm looking at him with the bow tie on, and he's talking about all in the African American community, and then he talks about DEI.
He's just all over the place.
All over the place. It's just
But as a reminder, his bill is for easier licensure for people released from prison, correct? Yeah.
Well, if he was talking about giving them occupational licenses, can they get it for free?
It's the expansion of Assembly Bill 2138 to prioritize African American applicants seeking out occupational licenses, especially those who are descendants of slavery.
Okay, thank you. At least he had that in his language.
Yeah, well, like you said, he only mentioned a few words about that, but Assemblyman Gibson is really, I would say, emotional but passionate, and eloquent in his presentation and speeches, no matter what bill that he introduces and stuff like that. So I always expect that when he steps up to the podium. It's almost like preacher-like.
Taking this back.
And
All right,
then they have prioritized them to get their licenses. Could it be for free? Now, I would be even happy if he'd have said that. They still have to pay for the licenses.
That's true.
That is
All right,
true.
Let's see what.
Good morning. Don't let my passion be seen less than my colleague if I don't powerful. But let me just say that this is my 12th year as a member of this legislative body and a member of this Black Caucus. And even within this legislative body, we have seen this caucus grow. And when you look at the members who represent the California Legislative Black Caucus, it's not like in the old days where it was either Oakland or Los Angeles. You have members representing all of California. So we represent African Americans, and we represent them proudly. But we also know that we have other citizens in our community who are learning about the experience that African Americans have been through and continue to be subjected to. And so as Senator Bradford and my colleague in the Assembly, Reggie Jones Sawyer, we are not going to be here to see the long haul of this good work that's initiating here under the task force and under this caucus and this bill package. But we will be here whenever they need us to be able to support and join in and continue to see the momentum move forward. The California Legislative Black Caucus's reparation package addresses historic and ongoing injustices inflicted upon descendants of enslaved Africans, and criminal justice reform remains a priority. Black people are incarcerated at a strikingly higher rate than white people in jails and prisons across the country. In California, Black people are incarcerated at a rate of 9.5% higher than white people. I'm here today to speak on two bills that ensure incarcerated persons are treated humanely and that rehabilitation remains the top priority. Assembly Bill 280, solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is one of the most severe and destructive practices found in today's detention facilities. The current consensus among mental health experts, human rights organizations, the United Nations, is that prolonged solitary confinement amounts to torture. The National Commission on Correctional Health Care states that a period of confinement beyond 15 consecutive days is inhumane, degrading, and degrading treatment and harmful to an individual's health. There is currently no state law that sets clear standards and limits on the use of solitary confinement in detention facilities. AB 280 provides a clear definition of what constitutes solitary confinement across all facilities, sets limits on how it can be used, and provides examples of alternatives to solitary confinement when individuals need to be housed individually. Additionally, this bill ends the use of solitary confinement for designated populations, including people who are under 25, are pregnant, 60 years of age or older, or have serious disabilities. AB 280 focuses on the treatment of incarcerated people. The next measure that I will present today is AB 1986, which ensures incarcerated people have access to materials to connect them to the outside world. AB 1986 banned prison books. This is authored by Assembly Member Isaac Bryan. Prisons use book bans as tools to limit access to education and impact nearly 2 million people incarcerated on any given day across the nation. In California, CDCR bans books they deem not to be in the penological interests of the state and with great inconsistency. CDCR processes quantities of information it bans is not public, and that they are not required to publicly post a list of their banned books. Today, there is no transparency and accountability process to ban books. The books currently banned seem to be disproportionately written by Black authors, activists, as well as other authors of color. AB 1986 by my colleague Isaac Bryan would require the Inspector General to post a list of materials that have been banned by the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation on the office's internet website. Most importantly, it would authorize the Inspector General to review materials to determine whether there is a legitimate reason for the item being on the banned materials list, and authorize the Office of the Inspector General to remove books from the list if they were banned simply because the authors were Black. There's a known fact that the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts the Black community. CLBC remains committed to creating a more just system by ensuring liberty and justice for all means liberty and justice for all.
I am proud to stand in this moment with my colleagues from CLBC who are doing amazing work on a broad variety of issues. I am also proud, and we as a caucus are proud to have Assemblymember Dr. Jasmine Bain standing with us in solidarity as she comes from a community that knows what it's like to feel systemic racism and discrimination impact them and hold them back. Today is a day, as was stated, that we are working towards a brighter future for every single Californian. Because if you touch the lives of Black Californians, if you touch the lives of African Americans, you touch the lives of everyone in California. We will not be left behind. And so that's why it's important that we have ACR 135, which deals with the awareness piece. It is important that we have the bill 3089. Now I'm trying to remember what the number is. Your apology.
Yes.
3089, thank you, staff. 3089 that deals with the formal apology, and you see a host of bills on action. And as was stated, the work is not done today. The work will not be done at the end of 2024. We will do this work. And although we have members of the Black Caucus leaving us, passing the torch to this next generation, just think that all the other members have at least about 10 years left. So we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. It is a massive undertaking, but we will get the job done. We now like to open it up for questions. You can ask a general question and various members may answer, but you can also identify a particular member who'd like to ask a question too. So I open the floor.
All right, family. Due to time, we're just going to go into the questions. But I believe it was AB 280 and AB 1986 that was mentioned looks like is going to be authored by Christopher Holden and Isaac Bryan. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the proper name for that is the Mandela Act.
The Mandela Act. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to the questions.
Member, you mentioned that you don't expect all the work to be done this year, but if we're back here on August 31st, what would success look like for this bill package in 2024?
I would say success looks like our priority package getting done. And I will note that there are almost 30 bills related to the reparations task force recommendations that are being introduced by various members up here. We've selected 14 that are our priority, and we want those to get across, and I would expect some other ones to get across the finish line as well. But part of this is about introducing bills to have the conversation. So many of our colleagues need to be educated on why California, things that are laid out in ACR 135. It was in Judiciary Committee yesterday. And a colleague of ours noted that when you look at the first half of California history, it looked terrible, and admittedly so. But when you look at the second half of California history, it talked about things that we had done right. Just because we do something right doesn't negate the fact that harm was done, and we have to address that harm through action. So success in August 31st at the end of session looks like our priority packages across the line plus a few more. I saw a question over here and then over here.
Yeah, I had a question for Senator Bradford about SB 1050, the unjust property takings bill. So the bill says that the chief financial officer within the Freedmen Affairs Agency would investigate complaints from families who say that their property was seized without just compensation and was taken through racist or discriminatory means. So can you talk about how the state would determine if property was seized through racist or discriminatory means? What would be the criteria for?
I mean, this still is a work in progress as we build this out. I mean, so we haven't put all the pieces together, but it would be a government agency, whether it's called the Freedmen's Bureau or whatever, that would help in determining and looking at historically what property was taken. Again, it's plenty of examples. Again, Section 14 in Palm Springs right now is being well documented. What I just stated about Santa Monica is being well documented. So it's there. It's now just working and having an agency that's going to be responsible for putting this all together, just like genealogy and assisting folks in the compensation.
Is that something that might end up being included in the bill if it's amended later on, like what exactly that means for it to be racist?
Again, it's a work in progress, so if amendments are required to help shape this and put meat on the bones, we're willing to do that. Yeah.
I do.
Hold on 1 second. Let me here and then here. Right here, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, thank you. This is a two-part question, probably for the Chair Gibson and Vice Chair Senator Bradford, please. Will there be any budget requests forthcoming for the funding of any of these current reparations bills that you're putting forth? And secondly, we heard that there is a 3-year plan for reparations bill. When in this 3-year plan can we expect legislation for direct monetary payments? Thank you.
Thank you. So a number of our bills do include have a fiscal component, and so those have been introduced, recognizing that we are in a budget deficit of historic proportions in comparison to where we were when the interim draft report came out. And so we recognize that. And as we work through the legislative process, we'll prioritize those with fiscal asks, recognizing the environment that we're in. We have a number of budget priorities from last year, which we worked with the governor to be able to include in his January budget. And we're continuing to fight for those to be included in the May revise. We noted in the LAO report, every single budget priority that we had from last year was actually listed as an option from LAO to defund, basically to satisfy the additional $15 billion that was noted that is continuing our deficit. And so we will work within the environment we are, and we'll be sure to make sure we work with our colleagues to prioritize investments in Black Californians. As it relates to what is the 3-year plan, we expect, as was, I believe it was stated here, but I know it was stated in a number of interviews, to work through 3 to 10 years to get most of these across the finish line. The 3-year plan comes from the fact that we have this governor remaining for 3 years. And he and his office have been collaborative with us throughout this entire process, and we expect that to continue during his tenure. In regard to direct cash payments to individuals, we will continue to have that discussion as we navigate the next few years. As noted, we are halfway through a legislative session. That means we have about 3 months of the legislative process in each house to work through these existing bills. In our next session, we have 2 years. And during that 2-year session, we will consider over the fall, concluding additional payments, whether they be direct cash payments or direct payments to communities. But really, it's going to take us as a caucus considering what is best in the budget environment, as well as we work through the constitutional framework that we exist in that still needs addressing, as Dr. Corey Jackson noted with ACA 7.
Yeah, I think just in response to that question as a whole, I think this has been a longer than a 3-year process already. We are already 200 years late. It's a 400-year process. We have some members of this caucus who are on a 1-year timeline before they turn out. There are a number of us who have nearly a decade. And so this is going to be a framework of legislation that we continue to put forward until all of the work is done. But of course, cash transfers has to be a core part of that conversation. Yesterday, we had a House resolution in the Assembly where we talked about Japanese internment camps here in California. And the reparations that occurred thereafter, direct cash compensation. Here in California, we have done cash compensation before for harms. For example, the harm during COVID resulted in a Golden State stimulus check. You all remember the card with the California Golden Bear just a couple of years ago, direct cash to all Californians. We know how to get money out the door to repair harm. We're experiencing the worst budget deficit the state of California has ever had, but make no mistake, we cannot have a full reparations conversation without talking about direct compensation for that harm. But that conversation is ongoing, and a huge momentous way to keep that conversation alive is to pass this priority bill package this year and to continue to build on that work.
Chair Wilson, will you guys split on the decision?
Hold on 1 second. Let me get the gentleman behind you, and then I'll go to you.
Yes, thank you. If you had to rank each legislation that you most of them, who would be the top 3 priorities? I know we have talked about SB 490, the policies.
So of our preparations, of our reparations priorities package, there are 14. The first one is awareness, which is ACR 135. The second one is apology, which is AB 3089, and then it's all the rest. Simple as that. Yeah.
My last question too, you got 80 assembly members, you have 40 senators. How would you navigate, to build a relationship with them to get them to understand and educate and support these legislation?
Well, although we have 80 assembly members, we need 41, and we have 40 senators. We just need 21. And so we will work to build a coalition around this, ensuring we educate our colleagues on this subject. They were all given the final report last June. We hope they are taking time to read it and digest it. But we also have an education tour plan led by Assemblymember Tina McKenna, who will work to ensure we not only educate members of our colleagues, but other members of the public as well. We have our State of Black California tour and conversation that is led by Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas that will work to galvanize the community around these particular subjects and ensure that not only are our legislators informed, but the members in their district are informed as well. And we know that part of the work of a legislator is listen to their constituents. So we want to make sure our constituents are educated so they can speak out to their legislator. Here, and here.
Thanks for taking your questions. I'm just curious, was the caucus split on the decision to not introduce legislation this year that would give out cash payments, and the governor gave you a heads up or directly talked to the caucus about not doing that this year?
So I'll bring over Assemblymember Bryan again to address, but I'll start with the caucus is united. We're unified in our package that we put forth, and we were unified in the bill that we decided to put forth as a caucus. And like I noted, several members of the caucus have introduced bills to start discussions around key components of reparations. And we all have been in the legislature for a moment long enough to know that sometimes it takes multiple conversations for our colleagues to get where they need to be able to vote in support of our reparations package or measures in general.
I think the chair, we are unified. There are 12 Black members in the entire state legislature. There have been less than 70 Black members who have ever served in this building. There were some early Black members in this building who weren't allowed to stay in hotels in Sacramento even after they were sworn into this building. So we're very cognizant of the legacies we stand on and the work that we have to do. And so we, of course, can unify. And the governor has been a very willing and able partner to talk through this package. We met with him as recently as last week. The community's calls for immediate direct compensation are not lost on us. The pragmatic realities of governing and legislating in the largest budget deficit in the history of California is also not lost on us. We also know that the budget crisis of today is not necessarily the budget crisis of tomorrow. It certainly wasn't the budget crisis of yesterday when we had $100 billion surplus. And so we've got our work cut out for us, but we're committed to doing that together every step of the way.
I think it's very important that we understand when we talk about cash payments, the systemic environment that we find ourselves in. Today, if a upper middle class parent has a child, the likelihood that that child would stay in the upper middle class is very slim. Just because one generation in our current systemic environment in this nation and in the state, right now, just because one generation makes it, the environment right now does not allow for all future generations to continue to make progress. So the question becomes, if we're going to honor our ancestors, which is always about the next generation, not just about me, it's about us and our children. What good is a cash payment if it's not going to, if it's only going to benefit one generation? Right? And so we, which is why part of our package, we have some systemic constitutional amendments, some things, again, one of the cornerstones of our reparation package is to clear the way of legal barriers, of systemic barriers, to ensure that if the work we do now will last another 100 years. And so we hear you. I want some money right now. But the question becomes, will our grandchildren benefit from me getting that money?
Yes.
So we are trying to also honor our ancestors and the wisdom that they have brought forth to ensure that we are doing right. And sometimes doing what's right doesn't mean doing what's immediate. And so we are going to take our time and we are going to make sure that the work that we do here lasts far longer than our time on this earth.
Thank you. There, and then there.
Thank you. As we all remember, the hurdles at ACA is regarding indentured servitude and slavery in prisons. ACA 3 faced pushback from the Department of Finance saying that it would cost, removing slavery from the Constitution would cost too much. Is ACA 8 facing that same pushback? And should removing slavery have to be justified from arguments that it costs too much?
Involuntary servitude is a loss of human dignity. Our current incarcerated persons are experiencing a loss of human dignity. I am an accounting person. That is my background, accounting and finance. I care about the dollars and cents.
Well,
but when it comes to human dignity, dollars and cents don't factor in. Simple as that. So yes, there are conversations surrounding it, and we are getting from our colleagues the same conversation, from some of our colleagues the same conversation that then Senator Sidney Comlander Doug had. But we will overcome that, because at the end of the day, dollars and cents cannot matter when it comes to human dignity. Thank you. So here, and then there, and then there.
Yeah, can you please talk about how you all arrived at this particular bill package, how you selected these priority bills, and then the task force had hundreds of recommendations. So, and if there's going to be a 10-year effort, do you have an estimate of how many bills might come out of it?
All right, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Weber, either one of you.
As we began to look at it, we formed a committee to look at all the recommendations. And at first, we whittled down over 100 recommendations on the task force to about 30-something, and then 30-something on down. And the idea is what could be done now. And I think as you continue to see more LAO projections, that we are a very wise caucus when it comes to making sure that we maintain a sense of discipline on ensuring that we just don't do something, like don't have anything to show for it. But then also making sure that we understand that if it's in the task force recommendations, they're all important, right? It's like saying what scripture is not important in the Bible, right? They all are. And we wanted to make sure that they covered a wide range of issues. And as you see, we have done that, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's criminal justice, right? Whether it's wealth. But the idea is we wanted to make sure that we covered a wide range of issues, but then we also were cognizant of the barriers that we might face this year, but still move the needle forward, right? Remember, we're setting the foundation this year for all the work that continues on in the process, right? Scripture tells us you got to count the cost, right? Which means that you have to understand what is necessary, what foundation do we need to lay now that will allow for even more success into the future. And I think that's what we need to do.
I think I'm going to ask a 190 question instead.
Well, I agree with what Assemblymember Corey Johnson said. We were very deliberate in our decisions at the caucus. I also want to highlight what our chair said. These are our 14 priority bills, but there are many members who are carrying other bills that are part of the recommendations from the Reparations Task Force. And I encourage all of you to continue to look at all of our bills and to support, as we will support, all of those bills are just not a part of the priority. Our responsibility is not lost on any of us. And we talked about that a lot when we were deciding which bills we would choose. In addition to, as has been stated, our financial constraints right now, but also the lack of education and the work that we have to do amongst ourselves, amongst our colleagues, and more importantly, amongst California. And that's why we are approaching this from a variety of different ways. We're approaching this from, yes, the bills that we have. We're approaching this from the different budget asks that we will have. But the education and communication component is key. Because as someone else stated here, there are 80 members of the Assembly and 40 of the Senate. And we have to get a majority in both houses to vote on these bills so that we can get them to the governor's desk. And that's going to take educating them, that's going to take educating their communities, so that their communities can also put pressure on their members to support these individual things. And so this is really, truly laying down the foundation, as so many people have said before. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I am a Californian, born and raised, and I thought all these issues happened in the South. I had no idea of the things that California has done, the things that our elected officials have done, the way in which we have been viewed and continue to be viewed in this state. And so there's a lot of education that must be done initially. And so these bills are wide, they touch on a lot of different areas, but it also allows us the ability to have wins coming out so that we don't come out of the gate with a bunch of failures from the beginning based on finances or based on the fact that people are just not aware of the fact that there have been significant harms that have been done and continue to be done to Black Californians. We are aware that everyone in the state is watching us, but also everyone in this nation, but also in this world. Because the discussion about reparations is not one that is specific to California, nor is it specific to the United States. You hear about the African countries talking about reparations as well. And they are looking towards California to make sure that we get it right. And so we are very well aware of that. We do not want to come out of the gate with a bunch of vetoes and losses on the floor, because we know that there's a lot of work that we must do and our individual communities and organizations that support us must do, so that we can fully implement all of the recommendations within the next 3 to 2 years. So thank you.
Can I follow up just really quick? How did you all pick the priority bills for the caucus versus what individual members would carry out science priorities?
So the all of the members, it followed a similar process that we have for our normal priority bills each year. So all of the members submitted their bills to the caucus as a whole. We all looked at them, reviewed them, voted on them, and those that got a supermajority were the ones that were selected.
Was there any criteria or something that the caucus is looking for in particular for the priority preparation?
So as was noted from Dr. Jackson, the members of the subgroup, the policy group, had narrowed the bills down to about 30, recognizing that our caucus not only is the subject matter broad, but our caucus has a broad, diverse set of skills and passions and focus areas. So we wanted to ensure that every member had an opportunity to submit something that was, or to carry something that was related to their particular passion or skill set. And so that it was, everybody submitted bills, so to speak, as these are the bills I'd like to work on within the reparations task force report. And then those were, like I said, reduced by that policy committee. And then that policy committee members voted on the ones that they actually wanted to prioritize and put their full forth effort, not only just of co-authoring, principal co-authors, but also in committee, on the floor, with their colleagues, that type of work. Thank you. We have here and then here, and that might be it. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do the floor, because we're at time. But we have here, 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 and then that's gonna be our last. And everybody had a chance to speak already.
Okay, I just have a follow-up to the direct monetary payment question. The Legislative Analyst Office is forecasting a budget deficit of $30 billion every year for the next several years. You've said that the reason you're not going to, for any budget spending requests for reparations is because of the deficit. So does that mean that you'll only be fight for reparations and direct monetary payments when there's a surplus, or are there plans to make that happen even during deficit years?
Just to clarify, and I don't know if you wanted to respond to this as well, but just to clarify, we are operating within a budget deficit. That is a constraint. We have bills that have a fiscal component to them. So that is not the primary driver to our budget package. Part of it, as Dr. Weber stated, is about education to our community and to our colleagues. And so, but yes, the budget constraints are real. We recognize them and we have to operate within them, but it is not the primary driver. It's just a recognition that that is one of our constraints. And one of our primary constraints, really, I would say, is education. We regularly received, when the draft report came out in June of 2022, we were at a budget surplus. And we had colleagues and community members calling us saying, why California? When people think about harm against Black individuals, they think about the South. When they think about violence, they think about the South. When they think about discrimination, they think about the South. When they think about racism, they think about the South. That all of that happens right here in California. And it is time that we educate everyone about that. The Reparations Task Force did an amazing job of documenting all of this within the report. And we encourage everyone, including our colleagues, to read it. We are now moving towards implementation, and it will absolutely take some time. And we'll continue to do that work and continue to bring the community along with us. Thank you. Here, and then I think you're our last. Did I see? No, you're last.
Senator Bradford, you had a bill that would create a state agency to kind of oversee these implementations. I'm wondering, just given how hard it is to create an agency, how Is it necessary to have this to put these proposals in place?
I think it's very important. It wasn't hard to create the tribal affairs for our Native American brothers and sisters, so why should it be any harder for creating these agencies for African Americans? We've done it before, examples as I stated. So I think it's time for us to step up and have this agency to oversee. We had an agency in 1865, which was called the Freedmen Bureau, that was responsible for the implementation of reparations. And so we need an agency, whether it's complement to what's already existing. We're not trying to recreate the wheel, but we know we need infrastructure. We need government oversight to do this.
Thank you. Last question.
All right, thank you. Quick question. So are any of these bills based on lineage-based reparations? And if so, which bills would that be?
Are any of the bills, say it again?
Are any of the bills based on lineage-based reparations?
Oh, you mean on African American descent?
Yeah.
Oh, there is one bill that calls specifically out, and that is from Assemblymember Mike Gibson, and it's AB 2862. That one has a direct relation to African descent. All of the other bills deal with they are absolutely recommendations from the task force, but they primarily deal with issues that disproportionately impact African Americans or those from African descent or Black Californians.
I've had a discussion with McGuire.
We do have to go, but I will just note that we have had a great working collaborative relationship with what we call the Big Three: our governor, our speaker, Rob Rivas, and Senate Pro Tem McGuire. Thank you.
All right, had to get through those questions because, obviously we were, running out of time here. But I guess kind of let's give our overall take on the question and answer period. But before we do that, I also want to go through the comments real quick. And then, Brother Tony, if you can please let us know what question you were going to ask. We'd really appreciate it. Yeah, at the end. But
she basically, she didn't give a full disclosure of the discussions. But my question was, had they had these discussions with Senate Pro Tem Mike McGuire, Democrat from the North Coast, Healdsburg, I believe, Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, Democrat from Hollister, and of course the governor. Those were the big three that she was talking about. But what I wanted to get out of what type of discussion were they were having, because later on, I have questions for them. I already had a couple questions for the governor, as you already know. There will be more of those. But McGuire, he was just sworn in as Senate Pro Tem, so he's the leader of the Senate on the Senate House side, and then we have Rivas, who has been the Assembly Speaker for the last 6 months. So he has in his first full legislative year. I'm going to be, posing questions to them about what type of discussions that they will have, concerning reparations and where they stand on it. So that was the question that I had for Assemblywoman Lori Wilson, which we reached our limit, so she had to cut it off. And I do want to thank her for letting us get in all the questions that we could get in and be respectful of our questions, and as us trying to be respectful of their time and stuff. So she had to cut it off when she had to cut it off, which I understood, because it was, including you guys. And I also want to, before I go any further, so let me stop right there. Amoya, Darlene, and my good friend Mims here. Kim, I want to thank all three of y'all for attending that press conference, because that's one of the issues that I had too. I have so many questions that I want to get out, but y'all came in with some great questions, all three of you, and that helped out a lot, at least when it concerns the Black community. So, once we're in that space and we can do that time when we have that many people in there who can get those questions out there and somehow get them answered, is a big plus for all us journalists in the room. So I really want to thank all three of y'all for being there from the bottom of my heart, because there was some great questions that came out of that. So, yeah.
All right, Kim, Darlene, thoughts about overall, I guess, and then the question and answer period in particular. Don't be shy.
Well, I think they had enough verbiage to cover themselves. It wasn't what we actually wanted to hear, but they did their job as the CLBC. As I stated, they keep saying, we can't move forward because we have to educate. Well, to me, you're trying to reinvent the wheel of the California Reparations Task Force. What was they there for, if not to educate the public? CJEC themselves has held numerous of listening sessions. Is it our fault that, you have people on the California legislature that don't want to read the report? So again, we're being pushed back. It's like we have to wait again until more people are educated. We've been waiting since we've been here in this country. So that's kind of my thought on it. Martin Luther King said, if not now, when?
That's why I let Darlene go first, because I just know I'm going to agree with everything that she says. My takeaways, I just don't feel that any of the questions were answered directly. They kind of danced around them. Darlene asked point blank, in which part of this 3-year plan can we expect to see monetary payments? I don't really feel that there was a sufficient direct answer to that. I guess another takeaway, I really hadn't heard it stated publicly before that this 3-year plan was to coincide with Governor Gavin Newsom's tenure. So we'll see how much gets done during that time. And I do keep hearing him say 3 to 10 years, 3 to 10 years. So, I mean, we'll have to see what all of that means.
All right. I'll just give my little 2 cents, and so we can wrap it up here. And Brother Tony, if you have anything else, and then I want to get through the comments real quick. But just to summarize this, my question regarding lineage-based reparations, I really wanted to see what their answer was, and I noticed that unfortunately nobody asked a lineage-based related question, and I'm so glad that we were there, right? And not saying that other ethnic groups wouldn't have asked that question. It was just a telling sign that it's important that individuals who are descendants within our community, regardless if we're part of the media or we're outside of the media, that we're in these rooms, right? Because we have to get down to brass tacks and focus and be on our square on who the eligible class is. And as we were going through listening to a lot of what was said and looking at these bills, I think, Brother Tony, your question was so profound. Like, what are your priority bills, right? What's priority to you? And this is just my opinion. I don't think what the CLBC is asking as their priority is the same as what the Black American descendant community is asking for, right? So they did mention the State of Black California tour. As Darlene mentioned, the task force already went through the community. There's an 1,100-page report that's already been documented, thousands upon thousands of hours right here on the Mass Media Group, that each one of you who's listening can go back and look at the testimonies and also the public comments that we're hearing from the community. But bottom line, overall, we have to have this SB 490 set up. That's imperative. You have to have infrastructure. The government doesn't work that way. Businesses don't work that way. Communities don't work that way. And as a matter of fact, nature doesn't work that way. Yeah, and sometimes it could be a little convoluted and confusing, but it's organized, right? It's organized. So that's my little 2 cents on the whole thing. Hopefully, when we go through these bills and these packages, I know sometimes we're like, oh, this isn't relevant to anything, but we have to analyze this, right? And that's why the title of this platform is what it is, the CLBC Fumble ? Because as we're going through these bills, we have to ask ourselves, and the community needs to ask ourselves, right? Is this what the California Reparations Task Force, them being the coaches, right, and the CLBC being the players, and they're on the field, is this what the coaches ask for the players to execute? This is the questions that we'll be asking ourselves as we go through the legislation. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these comments. Gotta get out, shout out to Reps. Always appreciate you. Thank you for coming through. Fumble, you say. Yes, Fumble, we do say. Peace and power reparations fam. Hope all is well. Reps in the building. And shout out to South Carolina. Hopefully they'll be getting some reparations out there, some legislation going on out there, because South Carolina, whew, they really need it out there. I mean, we definitely need it out in California. Actually, all of the United States needs it, really. The recommendations they picked are all over the place. Land and hair. All right. Got a couple emojis in the building. So yeah, Tony. So brother, I don't know if we actually got everything that you wanted to say before we close out here. So go ahead, brother.
Yeah. Thank you, Amoya. It's always got to be a starting point. So this is where they're going to start. Many of us agree with them, I would say. A lot of us don't. But I think if we can help them facilitate, this process, help them out, and get them to understand, what reparation bills need to be focused on the most, as SB 490 should be. I think they will get to understand it. I know it's been like a campaign over the last few months on the X platform, formerly Twitter, to get them to understand, hey, SB 490 should go first. I don't know if, that resonated with them right now, but we still need to get them, get them in line, so we'd all be on the same page that what you said, Amoya, that's going to facilitate everything that needs to be done here, because that's how it was done starting back in 1865. If you want to make sure any of this stuff get implemented. So that's what I've said. I have an appreciation for all 12 members. I work with them, journalistically, down at the state capitol, and understand the importance, the significance of their work, because things really move down there fast, which I'm learning, So I understand where they are. And plus, they have constituents that they have to pay attention to, listen to, and they have their bills that they have to make sure that they're sound. So they're dealing with all type of people, lobbyists, lawyers, the whole nine. Budget analyst office, to see how much these issues and bills are going to cost. I understand all that. And that's the same way that they're going to do. They will have to deal with, with this reparation package. Definitely going to try to definitely going to work with them in the best professional setting that I can, to make sure that whatever they're coming out with, that the public understand. Try to convey that to the public, so we can get some of these things done. It's going to be a process. If it's going to be 3 to 10 years, like they say, it may just be that. But they have to start somewhere, and this is the package that they're going to start with. So right now, that's what I'm going to work with them with right now. In regards, to keeping in their ear about SB 490. So I'll stop right there, Brother Moya. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. As always, we appreciate you, brother, for your wonderful work within the community and what you're doing, man. You're greatly appreciated. Kim, Darlene, is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, one thing real quick, I also want to appreciate Tony always, and especially for your time on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much. Two things. They kept driving the point that the budget deficit was not the primary driver, but it was the education piece. But if it's not the primary driver, why did they keep mentioning it? And then also, let's see, I wrote it down. I think that was it. Yeah, and I do appreciate there were 2 questions on SB 490. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. And then they said that they listened to their constituents. We know fully well that they received, and thank you, Tony, for bringing it up, the campaign on SB 490, the campaign and the call of action that we've had through CJEC, saying that these bills were not strong. So they are fully aware of those call to actions. So are they really listening to us is the question.
Yeah, that's a good point, Darlene. I'm not going to expand on that, but you are right, because you guys been at this for months, up and down the state, and I know they've been listening. I know they've been reading those messages because they're always tweeting out, Xing out stuff too, as well and stuff. So yeah, that's a good question that we have to pose to them. Are they really listening?
Ms. Kim.
Well, hopefully we'll get the answer to are they listening and the actions that they take as we push forward with this. I'm with Tony. The bills and the package are the bills that we've got. I'll reserve from making further comment on that until I've had a chance to fully read through the language and see what's in there. Like I said, maybe there might be some nuggets that surprise us, but we shall see. And just going to keep pushing for SB 490 for sure, because that is the infrastructure that we need to make this all happen. I definitely feel that it should have been a CLBC priority bill in this package. But since it's not, we've got to go take an alternate route to get it pushed through this legislative session.
All right, family. Thank you very much for that. Sundays right here on Emin the Mass Media Group. We have Road to Reparations, a community show. Hopefully, we will be actually starting on some of these bills that are priorities for the CLBC, the California Legislative Black Caucus. So please join us Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on Emin the Mass Media Group. As always, we appreciate you. Please keep educated. Please keep aware. Please keep informed. And most importantly, take action, right? Once you receive this information, you can actually take action, right? You can actually reach out to the California Legislative Black Caucus yourself, right? And reach out to them yourself. There's a lot of things that you can do in this legislative process to get these particular bills that the community is asking for, right? I mean, you have that opportunity, not just here in California, but all across the world, all across the nation. We greatly appreciate your support. So on that note, everybody be safe, be blessed, and as always, peace and reparations.
Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in Life Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.